Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a show today that will not disappoint you, unlike some disappointing things. This snowstorm, this snowpocalypse, it's nothing.
I can't believe he's downplaying it like this. We had a snowmageddon. If you went outside and felt that hail
There's like
in
this
DC,
much snow.
No, it's like I had snow boots up to here to get to work today.
I drove to work today and it took me less time than usual because there are fewer cars on the street.
I think you just did it to be a martyr, to say, I can handle this. I live in D.C. and I can find my way here. And I believe in our systems that are set up to...
I don't believe in climate change alarmism, and I'm not about to start that up now.
Okay, well, yeah. Robby got his wish. It wasn't so bad, but some of the rest of the country
doesn't feel
the same way.
I told you.
Coming up on Rising, we will, of course, discuss the multiple aspects of the deadly Border Patrol-involved shooting that took place over the weekend in Minneapolis.
Also, Axios has obtained leaked audio showing Senator Ted Cruz bashing President Trump and Vice President Vance in 2025.
And former CNN host Don Lemon says that despite the fact a judge blocked the DOJ's effort to arrest him, he thinks the Trump administration will find a way to get it done. But first, Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, a very serious subject to hit right off the bat today. Customs and Border Protection agents shot and killed a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis, Minnesota, outside a restaurant on Saturday. The victim is 37-year-old Alex Pretti. He was licensed to carry a firearm, and he had one with him. The available footage does not show every detail of what happened, but Pretti was holding a cell phone rather than his gun when the officers initiated contact and when they began wrestling him to the ground. Trump administration officials, including Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, have already declared the killing completely justified, claiming that Pretti had intended to murder law enforcement agents. But there is no evidence of this, none whatsoever, which is making it difficult for me to avoid the conclusion that, frankly, the administration is just prepared to brazenly lie about what happened. Now, regular viewers will know that I don't say that lightly. I am not generally prone to hyperbole. I think these clashes between law enforcement and the protesters are difficult to scrutinize and have brought out a lot of confident, bold, and wrong claims from people on all sides of the political spectrum. I think it's perfectly plausible that the officer, for instance, who shot Renee Good 2 weeks ago was justified because he did reasonably fear for his life in the moment. That might also be the case here with Alex Pretti once we know more. But that does not excuse members of our government saying things about his death that are verifiably false. And this is becoming a pattern, and I'm getting sick of it. Now Republican officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and FBI Director Kash Patel, they are taking the position that merely bringing a gun to a protest is a violation of the law or indication of murderous intent. Seriously, take a look. Here was Patel.
As Kristi said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. We will, of course, always protect your First Amendment speech. And if you peacefully protest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you have seen a trend here, not just in Minnesota, but across the country.
That's very wrong. Here was Bessent.
Have you ever gone to a protest, Jonathan?
I mean, we do have a Second Amendment in this country that...
Jonathan, have you ever gone to a protest?
I mean...
have you gone to a protest?
I mean, no, actually, as a reporter covering it.
Okay, I've been to a protest. Yeah. Guess what? I didn't bring a gun. I brought a billboard.
What are they talking about? They're completely wrong. You can bring a gun to a protest. Of course you can. You can vigorously exercise your Second Amendment rights and your First Amendment rights at the same time. Now, video footage of Pretti's death shows federal agents using pepper spray on the protesters. Pretti appears to be recording the altercation with his cell phone, and then after an agent shoves one of the protesters to the ground, Pretti moves to assist her. Several CBP agents then decide to bring Pretti down. It's conceivable that the agent who shot Pretti had the impression he was reaching for a weapon, though the first shot clearly went off after another agent had already disarmed Pretti. It's also possible that the killer didn't have even that much justification. Yet federal authorities have all but ruled out this possibility and are making abjectly false statements in support of their position. Noem has repeatedly claimed it's a fact Pretti intended to harm officers. She said this individual showed up to law enforcement operations with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition. He wasn't there to peacefully protest. He was there to perpetuate violence. Miller flatly asserted, Stephen Miller, that Pretti was a domestic terrorist who tried to assassinate federal law enforcement. Look, I'm sorry, this is not true. They have no evidence of that Pretti wanted to kill anyone. Even if evidence were unexpectedly to come out tomorrow, later today, that he was secretly a would-be assassin, it would still be wrong for officials to state as fact that he had intended to kill, because there are no known facts that establish murder as his motivation. This is a man who was watching officers interact with protesters and recording it on his phone. Contrary to what the Department of Homeland Security wrote on X, he did not approach law enforcement, let alone with a gun drawn. These willful omissions and obvious lies do not inspire confidence on my part that the federal government is interested in discovering the truth of what happened here. That is a glaring indictment of the administration's approach to immigration enforcement specifically and law enforcement in general. And as if quietly conceding that none of the available facts were advancing that narrative, now Republican officials are taking the ludicrous position that possessing a gun in the first place is evidence of intent to cause harm. It is not. Minnesota is a concealed carry state where it is lawful to carry a firearm in a public place. The notion that an individual cannot or should not exercise both his First Amendment and Second Amendment rights simultaneously, that's usually a misguided leftist talking point that I'm used to arguing against. In fact, the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, they took criticism from conservatives and libertarians for becoming squishy on this and advocating against the gun rights of protesters after January 6th. So I'm with Representative Thomas Massie, no surprise there, who wrote on X, carrying a firearm is not a death sentence, it's a constitutionally protected God-given right, and if you don't understand that, you have no business in law enforcement or the government. I'm also with the Gun Owners of America, an advocacy group that writes, the Second Amendment protects Americans' rights to bear arms while protesting, a right the federal government must not infringe upon. More Republicans should take their cues from Massie and from Gun Owners of America. The administration is eager to jettison cherished First and Second Amendment rights to forestall any possibility that a single federal agent might be held responsible for an improper shooting. Look, if they succeed, the GOP will cease to be a political party that even pretends to care about free speech and gun rights. Don't let them succeed at that. So I'm pretty upset about this one. Frankly, it's still somewhat ambiguous. I think it's less ambiguous than the killing of Renee Good, but it doesn't matter. We will find out whatever the facts are. Regardless of what the facts are, what Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller are saying is just not true. They've said he's a domestic terrorist and had a clear motivation there to harm law enforcement. There's no facts to support that. And if you're saying that's our view because he had a gun, well, he's allowed to carry a gun. I support the Second Amendment. So do you people, or so I thought. So they're caught in this really weird contradiction. It's unprofessional. I see a lot of conservatives turning on them. I'm hearing a lot of calls for, send in Tom Hammond, please, someone who knows what they're doing. Because Kristi Noem and Kash Patel, this isn't Scott Bessent's job, so he just didn't know what he was talking about there, fine. Kash Patel, Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, very disappointing right now. Gun rights are sacred to conservatives and libertarians. This is getting ridiculous, and I'm pretty upset about it. And I'm usually not this animated to be against something the administration is doing, but I find this indefensible.
Yeah, there are 100 different people that are co-signing, or probably more at this point, Kristi Noem being impeached. And so I think a lot of people within Congress are upset about it. I think when you look at the blatant lies and the mischaracterization, it makes you see, well, if this is happening publicly, what's happening behind closed doors? Sure. And when we see that local officials have been, no pun intended, iced out of the investigations twice now and complaining about it so much that they had to go make sure that they have access and make sure that nothing inappropriate is happening with some of the details from the scene. I think we all should be nervous. When you think about what's happening in Minneapolis altogether, it looks like a dystopian novel, but the only thing is that it's reality. And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the idea that the government is just being so adamant about these things that they don't know are true.
Yeah.
It really doesn't take much courage to me to simply say, I don't like what's going on here. This doesn't feel right. It doesn't take much courage for anybody to do that.
It's so easy for the administration, for Kristi Noem and the others to just say, a man is dead. It is sad a person died. We don't know whether the killing was justified under the reasonable use of force standard yet. We will investigate and find out. These situations are lamentable, and then they can say, and it is Democrats' fault because they will not do law enforcement, immigration enforcement themselves. So we've had to send in federal troops, and that is resulting in these clashes, and so it's on them. They can say that, fine. They just can't, but they can't say he's a domestic terrorist and thus he deserved to die. Like, he was there with his phone. He had a gun. He didn't walk up to law enforcement and point a gun at them. That's what DHS said in that tweet. And I'm glad we have video footage. We're debating all this video footage, but the video footage helps establish that is just absolutely not true. So they're making statements that give me no confidence they're interested in just objectively finding out what happened.
And this is one of those times where I'm actually happy about all the different citizen journalists out there and the impact of social media. Usually during these tough times is when, starting from like the Arab Spring with Twitter back in the day, when social media helps us, because had we just been subjected to take the opinions, which they are opinions, of federal authorities, we would have just been lied to and thought that as the truth until someone told a witness account down the line, which now they're getting several witness accounts on paper legally, but we have video and we have eyes, and none of us are federal prosecutors or investigators. But from what we're understanding and seeing, it doesn't look like the same story that we're being told. And so for these instances, I'm extremely appreciative that we don't have to just rely on he said, she said. We know that now the public has the responsibility to hold their local leaders and then federal leaders to account and say, you have to tell us what happened here and you have to do this fairly.
I agree. That's the power of social media, alternative media, and all those such things. Well, we're going to keep talking about this. We're going to do Your Lens next.
So up next, we'll have more on the death of Alex Pretti and the country's response to it. Stick around for My Lens.